episode of Cops and Cons. I'm Dave Dowling, your host, along with my co-host, Detective Jim Wethington. How you doing, JW?
What up?
What up? Not much. Ready to talk about some fancy stuff. This week we have a special guest, a friend of mine I did a little time with at Moberly Correctional Center, Dylan Hulett, a.k.a. Shorty. But we don't want to confuse y'all, so we're just going to call him Dylan. What's up, Dylan?
What's up, man?
What's going on, my brother? So glad. Thank you for coming and joining us and taking part of your day out to be with us. I guess I'll talk a little about what our topics are going to be, at least partially anyway, because usually we get a topic and then we get off on other stuff. But the topics this week are supposed to be re-entry, as in from prison, recidivism, as in going back to prison, and relapse and recovery from prison, such kind of talk. So that's where we're at with that. And
Dylan, you have to understand, we are going to go into tangents. If you could try to remember where we were before we went down that trail, that'd be great.
Right. Don't be afraid to bring us back.
Yeah.
We don't lay a lot of breadcrumbs when we start chatting.
Right. So now JW and I, we're a couple of old guys, but Dylan, you're a pretty young guy. How old are you, Dylan?
25.
25 years old. How much time have you spent behind bars in your 25 years?
About 6 years total, probably altogether.
6 years total. Wow. So that's a long time. Now, is that one prison bit or two?
I did 56 months last time, and then I've done county time since I was 16.
What'd you do 56 months on, if you don't mind saying?
Distribution of a controlled substance.
Distribution. So you were selling drugs and you were also using drugs?
Yes, sir.
Right. And that's...
You don't have to call him sir.
Yeah.
But I will, though. You know what I mean? On the show.
He'll take it.
I'm going to determine the level of respect people get on the show. Wethington, okay? I'll be interrogating now.
Be chill here. I'll be chill,
Right. So anyways, tell us a little about it. Tell us a little about your experience in your life.
Grew up in a split home. My dad and my mom are polar opposites, man. My dad's by the book, real strict. My mom, she was wild, man, when I was growing up. So I grew up around her, and basically she was getting high my whole life, on dope, selling dope. So I thought that was the normal thing to do. First time I got in trouble, I was 16 years old. The cops showed up to my house to arrest my mom, and I flew out the house and tried to fight the whole police department. Went to jail for that, got out. Mom needed bond money, so I started slinging dope. I ended up bonding her out of jail. 6 months after that, I caught 2 Class A felonies for distribution of a controlled substance. My stepbrother is the one that set me up. Did 56 months in prison over it, got out, and I've been out for a little over 3 years now.
Good for you.
That's when I met you, I guess, when you're doing the 56 months.
Yeah.
He looked like a little kid walking into prison, for one thing. By the time he got there, I'd already been down quite a while. They call him Shorty. He's not a real tall guy. And he had a real baby face. Now he looks you look 25 now.
Yeah, I couldn't grow a beard or nothing then, man.
Oh, when you came in, you looked like one of the little rascals who got caught. I was like, and he was wild. But I watched him mature while he was in there, And
you wouldn't be on this show if you had matured, Dylan. I promise you that.
Yeah. No, that's for sure. And, I have had people on the show who still struggle, not this particular show, but on prison counts. And it's unfortunate, And so when you talked about that you did a little time before, like the county jail time, and came back out, what was different coming out this time than when you got in trouble? Like when you got in trouble before, did you feel like while you were in there, you were never going to do that shit again? You were going to get right,
No, the first time I knew I knew I was going to get out and do the same thing. I was a knucklehead whenever I was younger. And then this time, man, there was a few things that came into play. My dad had came and seen me, and it was the first time I'd seen my dad in years. He lives down in Texas. And it was May of 2017. And he came to Moberly and seen me. And I have 9 siblings. I'm the second oldest out of them. I really wasn't ever in any of the other kids' lives, you know, and I definitely wasn't ever a good example. And I have a little brother and sister. My little brother is 5 and my little sister's 7. And I met them in a prison visiting room, you know, and then my dad, he's got some blood cancer type thing, and he came and seen me, and he was like, he came up basically to tell me that he was sick, you know, and I left the visiting room and we went out and we were on, it was summertime and we had, you know, the front yard and then the big yard split or whatever. And I was standing out there, and I'm not going to mention the guy's name, but we were standing on the front yard, and this guy's got like 4 kids, and he was standing there, you know, he's 50 years old, you know, he's been to prison, I don't know, 10 or 15 times probably. And he's like talking about how much he loves his kids, you know. And I looked at him and I was like, how can you say that? You know, like, how can you say that you love your kids, but you've been to prison this many times? And I was just looking at him and I was like, man, I don't want to be that guy, you know?
I think that's real telling right there, because really the truth is we learn something from everybody we meet, and that's what you want to do and what you don't want to do. And I think a lot of what you don't want to do sticks in my mind a lot better, because I felt the same way while I was in there. I watched guys who seem to want to spend the rest of their life in prison. And so my one really prerequisite of being a friend of somebody was you have to be trying to help me get to the door.
Yep.
You know, I'll be your friend if you're trying to help me get to the door. If you're not trying to help me get to the door, or you're trying to hinder me in any way to get to the door, we're not friends. You know, I'm not, you know, I'd gotten to the point where I'd pretty much, it looked like I'd thrown my life away. And I knew if I were going to ever have any kind of a life, you know, because if you do stuff in prison, it's not like TV where they're like, no big deal. They'll charge you and take you to court.
Yeah.
I mean, you will get more time. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
TV, it's real, you know, and there's cameras everywhere. And when you do stuff, you can just keep on catching more and more time, you know, doing drugs and stuff. So, JW, what's your experience with people coming out of prison? Do you see a lot of people that are on parole and still on probation? I mean, we know you do, but give us a little of your take on that.
Well, first of all, I will say this about what Dylan just said in the yard, like to the person we do not speak of, right? That's a profound statement for a young man. And when you are 18 to 25 years old, you will define who you're going to be. Like, so the fact that even though you were in prison and incarcerated, the fact that you were willing to see that as like, that ain't the dad I'm going to be, that's a big deal. And that should be a thing that you anchor yourself with. And I think that's awesome. Clearly, you meant that, you know, so that's pretty good. The best life lessons are usually caught and not taught. They're the things you see and you're like, I'm going to do that or not do that. So that's pretty big. So good for you, man. That's awesome. At 25 years old, man, I'm 50. I like to kick. I like to stretch and kick again, like Sally O'Malley.
Sally O'Malley. That's it.
I think that's the second time I've used that, and but it's still, I got a year of 50. I can do that for a year, you know.
You know, I've been home a few years now too, and you know, I used to run. People never knew I run. I used to run 5 miles a day, like Forrest Gump. I was out there every wreck, shining in the sun. You know what I mean? Like in my mind, hair blowing in the breeze, a Greek god.
Your hair was not blowing in the breeze.
But in my mind, I was a spirit Indian running the track. You know what I mean? That's what I felt like. And now all I eat's fried food, and my shorts fit underneath my waistline. You know what I mean? Like,
they flip.
Right. It flips over. There's no pair of pants or no strong enough belt to keep them up. It's really, freedom has really turned on me.
I'm no longer, I'm out of that calendar thing.
I was 49 when I got out. I felt 29. 3 years, I feel 64. I don't know. I didn't even do drugs. It was cola, which I'm off of now. You'll be glad to know.
I'm off of the cola.
I'm off the cola, and I'm off of, you know,
exercising apparently.
Well, 3 lunches. You know, I used to bring 3 lunches to work every day. You know, now I eat I'm like prison. I literally have a bag of Keefy coffee in my desk. and some oatmeal packets and a peanut butter jar because I have to get back to the basics of when
Are
I
you
was the help
warming up
desk.
the oatmeal with hot water in the packet and just kind of? Are you transferring it to a
Well,
bowl?
you wait. Especially the best
Are
one
you
is
eating
when
it
you
right
wait.
out of the pouch?
Right, when you get it down to the peanut butter jar, it's just almost empty, and you just pour the oatmeal packs in it and shake it up with hot water. Shorty, is that the best or not?
It don't
No,
get
that's
better than that,
full
man.
on peanut butter flavor you're getting right there, my friend. I mean, hit that back
Yep.
with some Keefy coffee, you got energy for hours. I mean, I've read whole
Yeah.
novels in that with that combination right there. Ran half marathons. So
uh,
anyway,
this would be the part, Dylan, where you like remind
right.
us what we were talking
Right.
about.
So I digress. So I'll tell a little of my stuff, Dylan. You told a
You
little of
wanted to
yours.
see what I've seen right out there.
Right. He's got a little taste of my ADHD over the years, but so I was the same as you, Dylan. I got in trouble when I was younger. They gave me a little rehab time, right, where I went to a rehab prison for I don't know, a year and a half or something like that. And I went through it, and in my mind, I was done with it all. I listened to all the classes, participated in the groups, da da da. Went back to church, told my family how great I was gonna do. Got home, and I'm not gonna say I went straight back into stuff, but I struggled. I struggled with where and who and the place, people, places, and things that I chose as my comfort zone and ended up relapsing on drugs multiple times, until I caught more cases and got in all this trouble. I tried geographic escapes where like JW has said before, I ran to California and he thought I was still in California. I came home, he's like, "Where you been?" I was like, "Well, prison." And he's like, "Oh, I thought you were in California." I was like, "Yeah, in 1994, bro."
We lost touch.
They brought me back on an airplane and set me in gumbo. Which gumbo was
That's not even a fake story, dude. I was like,
no,
"Hey,
that's
dude, what are you back from California?" You're like,
I
"What are
was
you?
like,
You're in law enforcement. What are you under a rock?" Well, I
right.
don't just
I
run
was
people
joking.
for no reason. You know what I mean?
Like you walk past all those wanted posters, with my face on, you didn't even recognize me. It's hurtful, bro.
Well,
Got a little
right. It
veteran
was
now.
back when you had hair. I didn't know who they were looking for.
I wasn't that good at running away anyway, and I was never wanted for that long. And I always kept going home and was surprised that they found me. Like, how'd you know I was here? How'd you?
Yeah.
It's right here on your court docket, bro. Right? But yeah, the difference this time was some of it was just maturity, and others of it was just seeing what I saw in prison, which was a lot of really negative stuff. And I talked about some of that on the phone. But really, what got me was just I just turned into kind of a mentor type guy in prison, and it wasn't really any. I mean, I pushed people to go to programs and stuff, and I don't want to tout programs now or disclaim them, but I think there's something to be got from all of them. I mean, anything that helps you mature and grow up is good, but I've seen so many friends regress and go back. Like I was at a friend this weekend that I went to his wedding and his reception this weekend, and only two people came that were previously incarcerated with him. This is the guy who did a lot of time, and I said, "Where's this guy and that guy?" He's like, "Well, I didn't invite anybody that's shaky, buddy. Even on my own, even guys that were my best friends." He's like, "If you're shaky, if you're doing shaky stuff, I can't have you around my life." And I said, "Amen. I mean, I get it. It's nothing personal, but I'm trying to protect me and my
Right.
family, and if you're doing right, that's great. If you're
Yeah.
not, generally people not doing right don't want to be around you anyway.
Yeah.
If you
Yeah.
people into drugs don't want to come back. But we also had a friend, and I'm talking about people that get out, and I've seen a lot of people that get out and do good. Like my friend I'm talking about, I went to his wedding. He worked on computers while he was in there, and now he's out. And he makes a good number six figures working, writing code for computers and stuff like that, and he does real well. And Dylan and I had another friend who was really kind of a mentor type guy with us while we were there, and I'll say his name since he's passed. Adam Vickers, my buddy Vic, and he got out and he had a different experience, and I'll let tell some of that story if you want to, Dylan.
Yeah, he got out, and when he went to prison, his kids were still young, and so like us, a lot of us younger guys, we all kicked it with him, and I learned a lot from him, a lot, a lot, a lot. Well, I mean, we worked out every day together. We ate dinner together. You know, we did everything together for 3.5 years, I think it was. And he got out and he did real good. And I think like he was used to, people like him building people up. Like his boys. He turned them into young men, and then me and a couple of my buddies, he turned us into young men, and so he was a leader, and that's what he was used to doing. And then he got out, and his kids were grown up, and I think that it really took a toll on him. And I was laying in bed one night. I talked to him every day, and it was 1:30, 2 o'clock in the morning, and my phone's going off. I'm sleeping because I got to work the next day, and I rolled over and looked at my phone and I answered it, and he was messing with this girl, and I don't know exactly what happened. Something went south. Anyways, I answered the phone, and he was a big guy. I mean, he was one of the toughest guys I ever met, and he was just screaming, crying on the phone, and he said, "I just wanted to call and tell you that I love you and you're my best friend, And he said, "I'm getting ready to jump off this bridge," and I was like, this is like 2 o'clock in the morning. You wake up to something like that, man. It's like, what the hell's going on? And I talked to him for, I don't know, I'd say 7 or 8, 9 minutes, and tried talking him down. He ended up jumping off the bridge, I-35 in North Brighton, I believe was where it was at, in Kansas City. And he jumped in front of a semi, got hit by a semi. I was on the phone with him whenever he jumped, and I heard him hit the ground before the phone, and he broke his back. I mean, he messed himself up bad, but he lived through it. But I had his son's number, and so I called his son. Called him. He finally answered, and I was like, "Dude, I don't know how else to tell you this other than, your dad just jumped off a bridge." And I told him where it was at, and so his son got up and went to where he was, and they had already rushed him to the hospital. So he ended up healing from all that, and he was doing real good. And he got with this other girl, man, and she just time after time, man, she would just tear him down, tell him how worthless. I mean, I seen the messages, he'd send me the messages, and so his daughter-in-law had contacted me a little over a month ago, and she said, "Hey, have you talked to Vic?" And I said, "No, I ain't talked to him in, I don't know, it'd been a few days or a week, whatever it was." And she said, "Well, he posted the status on Facebook, and David seen the status, and he basically posted, hey, I'm tired of letting people down. I'm tired of hurting the people I love." And he caught a case too, with a gun and some dope, but they've ended up finding him dead in the Moberly McDonald's parking lot. The autopsy ain't came back yet, but it's we know what it was or whatever. But yeah, it's just a sad deal all the way around the board for everybody that knew him, because he was just a really good guy.
He had posted some stuff before, and I tried to reach out to him and try to remind him of who he was and who he was to us, and what value he had to us, like a brother to me. He was like a brother. I can remember having just a couple years left to do and going after some guy in the gym and him stopping me just for the fact that he didn't want me to lose my date. That it brought me back to reality when my anger was getting the better of me and brought me down and got me some sense going again. And it's probably saved me, from maybe having to do more time or having a harder time in there or whatever. But he was that kind of guy that really did that. And, JW, you have some training in suicide prevention and stuff, don't you? Some type of.
Yeah, I mean, I have a touch of that. I'm sorry about your friend. I mean, that's brutal. What a way to, I mean, wow. I will say that I have a little bit of experience with that and everything. And I know some people that work like suicide hotlines. But the fact of the matter is, just on an outside looking in with your friend here, and I'll say it out loud. I'm sure you guys are already thinking it. he kind of lost his purpose in life, right? I mean, his purpose was
Exactly.
get my friends out of here. When you walked out, you flew off like a dove at a burial site. It's like, go be free. And then when he got out, he didn't have anybody to save anymore. He didn't have a crusade left. And then it was tough to do it for himself. What a giver your friend was.
Right.
But there's a lot of good people in bad situations. And that's what it sounds like when he got out. He's a good guy in a bad situation. And then you just start making bad choices. But as far as suicide goes, I know that one of the most interesting things that I've learned about it, and I try to pour it into my kids. And Dylan, you got some young kids.
Yep.
There's a couple things that lead to teenage suicide, right? Or just suicide in general. It's the feeling of, I can't solve my problem. I'm hopeless, right? So it's never too late to make your kids start solving their own problems. Solve the problem. My kids are sick of hearing that. I had a special needs daughter with bad hands, and I'm like, well, open up the bag of Doritos. I ain't gonna open it for you. I come off as like some evil villain, but I know the long game, right? But the most interesting thing about it that I've ever learned in this job off of suicide hotlines is one of the first things they ask is, the suicide hotline, are you going to injure yourself or someone else? And then they ask, one of the next prefacing phrases is, have you thought about how you're going to do it? And if a guy like your friend, which was Adam, or Vic?
Yeah, Adam Vickers was his name. We called him Vic or Adam, mostly
He was
Vic.
pretty serious. Well, obviously he was serious, but yeah, I'm on a bridge right now. I'm going to jump. But they one of the first things they do to weigh like where we at on this crisis is, are you there, ready? And do you have the means to do it? And then the last thing when they talk them down is they'll say, promise me if you go there again, you'll reach out to somebody. And I don't know, but obviously it works. I mean, they're the ones that are the professionals. So it's hard to talk a person out of suicide. It's really tough.
Well, and when I got the cases and caught the charges that put me in prison, I look back on that, and that was really my way of killing myself back then. I was like, I know I'm getting caught, and I'm tired of going through the relapse recovery thing, right? Okay, I go through something bad, I go through a bad binge, mess up a bunch of money, tell a bunch of lies, this kind of thing. Then I come out of it, I start getting myself back together, I work real hard, I start repairing relationships, things are looking good, and it happens again. Here you got to start all over again. And people, after about the fourth time of repairing relationships, some of those relationships are irreparable.
Mm-hmm.
They're done with it, and that's hard to swallow, especially when you're a young man. When I was like your age, Dylan, 25, 26, when I really got in trouble.
When he had hair.
When I had flowing locks of hair. I mean, Indian
He's
spirit
like Rapunzel,
runner.
this guy.
Right. I mean, like one of the Von Erich brothers for you old enough to know who they were. Yeah, I mean, really, a lovely man I was. But anyway, that's beside the point. My point was, see, you're messing me up. I had important, serious business going on here, and you have to bring up
repairing relationships, and then
you don't know about the grief of lost hair. Okay, you're wearing a hat because you like a hat. I'm wearing a hat because I'm not ready to see the public to see me, full on bald. But anyway, so doing that over and over, and that's why in like the Alcoholics Anonymous book, there's a part where it says talks about that, and he says that the alcoholic comes to the jumping off place, right, where he no longer can imagine his life with or without alcohol, with or without drugs, with or without any of this stuff, and like you said, JW, hopeless, and I can't solve my problems. And so I was too scary. I don't like pain. I didn't want to have to shoot myself. So I thought, well, I'll just have either one of these other crooks or one of these cops shoot me, And luckily I ran into a Richmond Heights cop, and I don't remember his name, but he's the one who actually caught me. And he decided not to shoot me when he had some pretty good, he probably could have got away with that one pretty easy, but I since had written him a letter, and I don't know if he cared about it or not, but I thanked him for not shooting me. I was
For
like,
what it's worth, right?
right, for what it's worth, hey, thanks for not pulling the trigger, buddy. I appreciate it. But, going through prison, and I can understand what Vic was feeling, because as I went through prison, I became a pretty well-respected guy in prison. Like, I had a say in things and when I was in prison. Like, I wasn't a member of a gang or anything, but I could go to gangs, and I got respect, and I got listened to, and I did have a say, And coming home, you know, the one thing I missed about prisons was when I walked out of my cell in prison, there were at least 200 guys around me who could relate to me 100% about what was going on with me,
Yep.
And then I could cut that down to about 20 other guys who were real close to me, like brothers, that I could laugh with, joke with, that knew when I was down, that knew when to leave me alone, that knew when to come yell at me and tell me to get up and start doing stuff. And, really in-depth, intimate talks and friendships, and then I came home.
Those were the men in there.
Right. Those were the men in there, and then I came home to this chick I married, she don't know. No. But it was weird. It was different because, I would tell her to do something and, she wouldn't do it. It's like, what do you mean? And, I'd be like, well, let me call the other kids in this house and we'll just rally against you. And they did not rally to my side at all. They, she was shot calling in this house, and I had to learn to accept that. You know what I mean? Dana, Mrs. Dowling, was shot calling me down and continues to do so today. And I've been relegated to a mere foot soldier. Hard to take sometimes. I'm not going to say I was ever the general anyway, but I was a pretty good colonel. You know what I mean? And when real tough guys weren't around, I was kind of in charge, sort of. But yeah, so like when you're out there, especially when you're on the street more, JW, a lot of people, like when you were catching up to people and let's just say like more serious crimes, were you a lot of times were these first time offenders, or what was your experience with guys who have been locked up before?
Yeah, you talked earlier before we went into one of our tangents. I don't know which one it was, about what of my experiences with recidivism.
Recidivism?
It's hard for me to say.
You went to college. I mean, I saw your degree. There's something on the wall over there with your picture on it.
Well, it doesn't mean I can pronounce recidivism.
But you did. Boom. I mean,
you should hear me try to say particularly. That's a tough. But anyways,
I hope I don't have to hear that again. It made my jaw hurt when you said that. I don't know why. The headache came all the way around my face. But go ahead.
So the interesting thing there's plenty of people that you pick them up, you get in a situation with them, and they got their Department of Corrections ID, and that's the ID they have. It's not, they haven't got any other ID. Like, you've been out for how long? 8 months, 9 months, and you haven't stepped into the to get the real ID. Like, you're still walking around that ID. It's often a warning sign. It's like, well, you ain't long for going back. The guy that's using it, he hasn't really even tried to. I get institutionalized, but at some point you got to get out and get like a real license. And there's a lot of people that loop back, and they're easy to put back away because of their record, and usually because of the crimes they've committed. And you want to make that decision as a police officer. You're like, well, this guy needs to get off the streets, right? The people that I feel bad for are the ones that are the good guys that get out, like your friend Vic, and end up tied up with the wrong woman or the wrong people again, that are just going to use him for what they got. And their choices end up completely based on the people forcing them into it. Now, people that are out doing stupid stuff, that, and letting a guy run, some dude from the streets that he knew back then, he jumping back in, I don't have a lot of compassion for that guy. But the guy that hooks up with the wrong partner, whether it be a female that comes back out and starts dating her female friend, or a male with a male, or a woman with a man, all that politically correct relationships that you run into. The person that I feel bad for are the people that come out and they get involved in a relationship, and that toxic person is the one that drives them into revoking themselves
Yeah.
because
Right.
they don't have the emotional intelligence. And it's usually presents as a full blown domestic or some sort of out of control situation where even knowing the situation, I still got to follow the law. And you can sit there and know that like you're only going batshit crazy because of the person you came out and shacked up with or hooked
Right.
up. This person's driving your bad behavior. So a lot of people go back to prison. I have no problem sending people back to prison when they have to go because that's what I do. But I do feel bad for that person that working in the black and not the gray area. It's like, dude, I get it. This person absolutely provoked you, but you went too far, and now you got to go
Right.
back. That one I feel a little bad about.
Right. And one thing is, and I can tell where a guy's at a lot of times with prison and the whole thing is, where's your identity? Because a lot of people really, you keep that prison ID and show people that prison ID for a reason. You want them to feel some kind of way about you, like you have built your identity around the fact that you're this ex-con. Now, me, I don't care to do that. Now, I will talk about my prison experience when it's pertinent, when it's, appropriate. Like on this show, I have this outlet to talk about my prison stuff. In my day-to-day life, when I'm working as a sales representative or running my tow truck, I'm not bringing it up. If you ask me about it and it's appropriate time, I'll tell you a little about it. If you need to know about it, if you want to get into particulars, then probably not. And when I meet somebody and all they want to, if I see somebody who I've been in prison with, and if they're just, what I want to hear is how happy you are not to be there and how much you don't want to go back. I don't want to hear any of that hip shit. I don't want to hear any of that slick shit. I don't really care. And you don't need to tell anybody how tough I'm not. Most people already know. Okay, I'm not. It didn't make me really any tougher. It made me emotionally tougher, more mature. It made me get control of my emotions and realize that really no matter who I'm around or what's going on, it's not an excuse to break the law and do bad behavior and go back and kill myself again, because I like myself. I got to prison, sobered me up and allowed me to be Dave Dowling again. And I like Dave Dowling. I like being Dave Dowling. That drugs and all that identity and that tough guy stuff is not real. It's not me. I like being funny and silly or having an actual deep conversation about something meaningful. And a lot of times, I'm a tough on crime ex-convict. I'm like,
He is. I'm lighter on it than him, Dylan.
yeah, because I know one thing that I understood was consequences. Okay,
Yep.
consequences clear me up, and the thought of further consequences when everything else is going bad, it ain't as bad as them consequences were. I promise that. So I try to stop myself and keep it in mind. And I have been lucky enough and blessed enough that I came back and got surrounded by good people. But I think you draw people like that to you when you're doing the next right thing.
Yep.
And I do have sympathy for guys who go back. I had one guy that I think we were both in there with that had just ended up catching a murder charge. He had been out just a year right over here in the neighborhood we're in here in St. Louis area. He's charged with first degree murder right now. He was home for 1 year. I helped him get a job. Next thing you know, he's on the news. And another friend called me and said, hey, he wants to know if he can call you from county jail. And I said, no, you
Yeah.
can't call me from county jail. No, you're not calling me anymore. I'm done. You killed yourself and did that. Now, maybe once you either get convicted or not get convicted, whatever you do, maybe down the road, but I don't want you calling me right now. I don't want to be a part of that. You made your decisions. I saw you one time a couple weeks before that. I told you about the drugs. I told you what I had to say. You got upset. If you get a chance to hear this, maybe you'll hear it someday or not, but you got upset, blew me down, told me I wasn't, a goody good. And I said, all right, brother, think what you want. Don't come by my house,
Peace. Right. Two fingers and a
Right.
thumb.
And now, that's probably his final strike and somebody has lost their life, and so it's that serious. I don't feel sorry for him. I feel sorry for the person he murdered and their family.
Yep.
That's who I feel sorry for now.
Hey,
And
Dylan, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Have you rekindled with your mom? How's that relationship going?
So my mom, before I got home, about 2 months before I came home from prison, she got a target letter in the mail from the feds. She got indicted for a $1.7 million conspiracy. It was the one out of Kansas City with the Rockstar Burger guy. I don't know if you heard about that one or not, but she's been in county for be 3 years in October fighting it. I didn't home plan to her house because I knew what that entailed. You know what I mean? I knew that if I love my mom. You know, she's my best friend. She's always been my best friend. But when we started getting high together, that's all that our relationship consisted of. You know, we didn't know how to, I mean, as far as anything goes, talk without getting high. You know, like our relationship, our son and mother relationship kind of went out the window, you know, and we just became more business partners than anything, you know. And I talked to her. I have a 2-year-old son and a 7-year-old daughter. We video chat her and stuff, you know, but it's just one of them deals. She's probably going to get 360 months in the feds, you know. So I mean, she's almost 50. She'll be 50 years old real soon, you know. So I told her, you know, if as long as she's staying out of trouble in there and doing what she should be doing, you know, we'll come visit her every once in a while, and she can, you know, we'll talk to her or whatever. I answer whenever she calls, but it's just one of them deals, you know, that like I don't have time in my life to be letting people pull me down, you know.
Yeah,
So
tough.
well, and I see that in your posts, and I see that every time you call me, which he FaceTimes me every time, JW. He FaceTimes me. You
Yeah, well,
know,
he's
I'm
young.
like,
I mean,
bro,
what do you want?
what's with the
He ain't
face? You know what I
texting.
mean? I mean,
Hey, Dylan, at least
right.
you're not
But I
doing
mean,
all the
I'm not.
texting
My face is
like
contorted, filled with
emoji.
rage. Right. See, I'm ready with, I'll hit you back later, and then maybe I do or don't, and then, you know what I mean? And I don't really, but
no,
I mean to, but I just not doing it now. And like me and you are kind of the same. Like we can have whole conversations in 8 words, you know, but
Yeah,
Dylan likes the
that's
personal,
all right. Good.
but I'm super
Hey,
proud
dude,
of him.
that's a skill
You
that,
could say,
based on what I can tell, that's a diminishing skill. So when we're in the grave, you'll be the only guy that can talk to people.
right,
You know,
that's it.
no,
someone will be like world's last communicator.
But I love seeing a young guy get out, man, become a family man. You know, he's got a beautiful girl and he's got beautiful kids, and you know, it's a pleasure and a privilege to be part of somebody's life like that to me today. You know, to have a friend that I know I could call at any time with any kind of situation, and he knows the same thing too. And that's where it's at. You know, don't wait until your life is in super crisis to reach out and talk to your friends. You know, I mean, don't, you know, tell people
Yeah.
what's going on day to day so they can tell you to stop long before that. By the time you get to the crisis like Vic was in, well, it is overwhelming. You know, you have become overwhelming, you know, and it's very sad.
It's very, things are just, man, things get real quick. And if you're not ready for the ebb and flow of life, it's going to be hard. And then I think that, but when you feel like you've lost your purpose, just sounds like your friend Vic just didn't have a mission in life
Well,
anymore. And
you
then you
know,
got some rancid, relationship. I'll stop short of using the nasty words you put at the end of rancid, just telling you how terrible you are. Oh my gosh. I mean, where am I supposed to go with that? You're supposed to build me up. It's so hard. Like, and you were talking about this earlier, Dave, to break off a relationship. And friends are some of the hardest people to break it up with. But that's a relationship, and you have to break that relationship. And there's just times you got to say goodbye, especially. And Dylan, you're a young man, and I think it's great. And you're a man for sure, and for what you're doing and keeping on the right track. But as you get off in life, man, you got to crack those. You got to sever those toxic relationships, man, because those are the people that are going to bury you at the end of the day. That drag is going to sink you to the bottom of something. So, but unfortunately, your friend just didn't know how to get out of those bad
and that's
relationships.
it.
Some of the hardest things I've had to say is tell a friend, peace, brother. Like, don't come to, like Dave said the other day, don't come to my house. This is done. Like, my kids don't want you. I can't explain you to my kids. Like,
Right.
you know what I mean? My wife, I can explain you to. I can explain my wife to you because she gets it. I can't explain. What was that guy doing? He smoked a lot of cigarettes out by the mailbox, Daddy. Yeah, because Daddy wouldn't let him come up to the door, honey. You know?
Right. But, and I know you've had friends that have come to you and they've gotten in legal trouble too, JW. And I know that's got to be kind of tough, sometimes when you still do like a guy, and you want to, you want to be a good dude, but at the same time, I mean, sometimes you're helping somebody and then sometimes you're not, and you're certainly not going to put your career and your family in jeopardy to,
not for a
help
minute.
somebody. Not for that. No, of course not. For one, it would take away from
not
your
a guy
integrity.
I went to high school with that's still doing the same bullshit.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's
like,
how I
what am I
feel
helping
about
you
it,
out
too.
of? This particular jam? It's not a life jam. It's a career choice jam. It's a lifestyle jam.
It is.
So yeah, I steer clear of toxic people, and it's hard for some people to get that, especially coming out of prison. People that don't really know, they latch into what they can. Here's an interesting stat, because Dave loves it when I do this. So, Dylan, you'll take a ride with this statistic.
I mean, I brought you
There's
in for the stats, bro. I mean,
it's like 50, something like around 50 million people in the country with mental illness. Like 50 million. And these aren't people that have been incarcerated. 50 million people, something around there, give or take a couple million, right? And that ranges from like ADHD to like the worst, schizophrenia, bipolar disorders. And then you add on the drugs, and that's like a co-occurring problem. Like it's technically called co-occurring, where you try to self-medicate your mental illness with drugs. I think there was around there's a couple of years ago, last time they documented like around 50,000 suicides. So I can't do the math on the top of my head. Was that 10%?
Yeah.
I don't know. Somebody Google it. So 50,000 suicides a year. I don't know. Maybe it's 1%. I don't know.
well, it's still a pretty good number of people.
50,000 suicides a year out of 52 million people with mental illness. So at any given time, 1 out of 5 people has a mental illness. It's something like to that effect. You're surrounded. You could be in like the supermarket and there's 5 people with mental illness, at ranging scales.
Right.
And so, of course, people are going to commit suicide if they don't feel like they have good people in their life. The people that have toxic people that have cut them off, those are the people who are going to kill themselves. Your friend was a victim of who we picked.
Yeah. I had this one old black man years ago when I first got locked up, and we were sitting and talking, about kind of like this kind of conversation about like mental illness, drug relapse. And he said, David, they don't lock you up for being crazy. They lock you up for acting that way. And that stuck with me so strong.
That's pretty
They
good, yeah.
don't lock you up for being, you can be as crazy as you want, but you come out here acting like that, they're going to have to put you somewhere, and there's a ton of truth
Right.
in that, and
There
I'm not
is.
trying to make light of mental illness or any of that. I understand that there are people who have no control and stuff, but, and there are decisions you can make, there are choices, because when you deal with depression and then you add a drug that takes you up and brings you way down with more depression and scrambles your thoughts and makes everything seem more intense, and then you're coming off of that and you're with somebody else who's got mental illness and is probably going and doing the same stuff, and you got a real sick relationships going on all around you, and all the friends that are around you, all they want is more drugs or some of your drugs or money or something they can get from you. Well, you're in a real rat's nest there, and it is hard to get out of it. And sometimes getting locked up is the saving grace. I mean, I got rescued by the police. I don't know about anybody else, but they came and rescued me, and maybe rescued other people, because I was driving, using drugs and drinking and all this kind of ignorant stuff and putting people at risk. People are trying to take their kids to school, and I'm running around stealing and drugging. And I mean, when you sober up and you do get your mental health back, which you can get your mental health back, sometimes it's therapy, sometimes it's good friends, but for sure it's faith and hope. Got my mental health back. And you start seeing things clearly of what you have done and what you are. Now, just because I do have regrets in my life, I like to take those mistakes and help others with them. I can't erase what I've done or who I've harmed or who I've hurt, but I can use my story and my experience to say, well, I see a lot of people comment on platforms, TikToks and stuff, and a lot of things. Well, a lot of those people aren't talking from a place of experience, but in my experience, it does take some hardship. All right, everything. Nobody was gonna pet me like a kitten until the addiction went away. Okay, it took for me, steel and concrete. Tough people and crazy nuts. All right, guys with life without parole telling me that I was an ass and needed to frickin' act right. And it helped me see me clearly, and it got me back to where I always wanted to be, in the position with the kind of friends I always wanted to have, to be the kind of friend I've always wanted to be, to have the kind of wife I always wanted to have, and all that, So it can happen for you if you're listening from inside. It can happen for you if you're sitting there still involved in your active addiction. I don't judge you, but the choice is always your own. And if you're not going to make the choice your own, then somebody's going to make it for you. Eventually.
Dylan, were you an addict when you went in, or just a dealer?
I was an addict too, and my first 2 years in prison, they were rough, man. I mean, my first 2 years in prison, I was high every day. I stayed high.
And he looks high when he's high. I mean, he's freaking.
It's hard to hide it.
He'll try.
Yeah,
He trying to walk through the range. His eyes are
They're like, hey, that guy's high, I think.
right.
I
The
got
little
my
tiny
scene
slits are shooting red laser beams out of him. I'm like, look at
yeah,
this.
yeah.
Look at this. He looks like he's wearing a size 17 shoe with a size 8 foot. That's how he's walking. Not
Yeah, it was.
big old
It was a bad deal, man.
clunking around.
clunking. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought I was bulletproof, man, and I got my ass whooped a few good times, and it humbled me out a lot. And I think that was another one of the biggest things, I needed humbled out for sure, because I came from a small town, and you're from a small town, you whoop a couple of people that are like, damn, man, don't visit that kid, And then I go to prison, and I caught my case when I was 17 years old, went to prison when I was 18, and fighting grown men, that's a lot different than fighting 15-year-old kids.
Ain't it,
And
though?
yeah, it took me a few years to figure it out, man. But I'm glad I did, because I could have had a lot longer in than the 56 months.
No, well, I'm certainly glad you did too.
That's interesting, Dylan, and because Dave and I had talked about it on other episodes, like how depending on the county, really depends on that sentencing, right? So you're from a small town, upper, like northern county in Missouri. So the judge is like 17, go F yourself. Off to prison you go, young man. So we're here in these major metropolitans. It's like, well, if you do this 8 more times, you're off to prison, and they're like 17 years old. Bye-bye, so it's a completely different dynamic. Did you get into a program that to kind of, or did you just get around the right people? What's helping you get out of there? What helped you got out, and what helps you stay out?
So me and Dave got a mutual friend. He passed away. Tyson Albright. He led the Celebrate Recovery, and I walked around the track with him for months, and he was like, just come try Celebrate Recovery out, and I'd go to NA, and all that stuff. And Tyson, man, he was a leader too, and he'd do anything to help you. One thing that's helped me stay clean is, and I tell people this all the time, Tyson used to say, addiction is like the little green Mucinex, man, that's on the commercials, and you got to keep your foot on his neck, because if you don't, you let off a little pressure, he's going to be slippery and he's going to get out and he's going to get you. So that was one of the biggest things that, helped me stay clean. And then, you surround yourself with people that have done the exact same thing as you, probably more than you, or worse things than you have, and, I'd just be like, man, if they can get clean, why can't I? And just being young, I surrounded myself with a lot of older people, and like Dave, we'd sit and talk, and, Dave would basically tell me, man, get your shit together, and so,
Well, there's
yeah.
just nothing more heartbreaking than to see people doing what you know they're going to do, and you see that they can't see it yet. Luckily, Dylan was one that could see it, and I'm so glad you mentioned Tyson Albright, because Tyson was a dear friend of mine. He lived 3 doors down from me, and we were in constant conversation and cahoots. And he ended up getting cancer while he was still in prison, and he was just a young man in his 30s, and he finally got out of prison, but he died real shortly afterwards from the cancer. But he did leave a huge mark on a lot of our lives, and
Yeah.
I still can remember sitting and, listen to him, what he had to say about recovery and about doing right. And he walked the walk, every day. And being there with his brother, because his brother was in prison with him too at the time, and watching him have to watch his brother die in prison, it was a very intense time, and I'll post some of those pictures for all you to see if you want to see some of that kind of thing, and see the people we're talking about. And if
That's why prison counts,
right,
right?
and we're gonna that's why prison counts. So it can count. It can count for nothing. Your life can count, or it can count for nothing. It depends on what you do and what you use your experiences for, in my opinion. But if you want to reach out to us, and I want to thank Dylan for being on the show with us, man. I really appreciate it. It was really a deep and great conversation. JW, as always, it's been a hoot, and keep it lively here. And if you have,
Yeah.
right, we ask you to follow us on Instagram. You can go to Cops and Cons. You can see us on prisoncounts.com. You can check me out on Facebook, Dave Dowling, if you want. You can follow me on the Cops and Cons Facebook page or the Prison Counts Facebook page. You can just come and ask me to be your friend, and I may or may not. I'll have to have my wife look at your picture first, and she'll decide if I'm allowed to be your friend or not. That's kind of how that works. But
if you have a plunging neck,
put on your
line,
turtleneck
you're out.
in your Facebook page if you're an attractive lady who would like to be a friend of mine.
Yeah,
On Facebook, because I just don't need the trouble right now. I'm just telling you, I'm under a lot of pressure. I work 2 jobs. Anyway, God bless you guys.
Nice to meet you, Dylan.
Thank you guys.
No problem, man. We'll see you next week. See you count time. That's what I used to say, and I guess that's what I'll keep saying. Take care now.